Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for another nerdy fandom discussion psychology sort of video. I want to talk about the suspension of disbelief in fiction, video games, whatever you want to call it. Hell, there's the suspension of disbelief even when you meet a person in real life. Maybe a person in real life tells you a crazy story and you're like, just maybe I believe you. There's enough kernel of truth to your story that I might think that something is true. Maybe if we were to look at this picture of Pikachu with a machine gun, a lightsaber, riding a shark that is half Dino Rider into a magical, strange world, we might have to really suspend our disbelief to tell ourselves that this is plausible, that this could actually happen, right? It could. And that's why I want to talk about canon and everything too, and like fandom and nerdom. And that was one of the things why I was talking about. I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth fails is because it's very hard to suspend disbelief in the world that they are giving you because it's so ridiculous, right? I've given the example of a game like Star Ocean 3. Now, again, the last two-thirds of Star Ocean 3 is absolute trash and it's garbage, but one of my favorite things about Star Ocean 3 is before the final two-thirds of the game is it was very easy to immerse yourself in the world and to suspend disbelief that it is plausible that these characters are acting in this way. And that is because the game did a good job. You didn't have to do a side quest. Now, of course, they could have done side quests, but to add more to the story. But there was the whole dictionary system that you never even have to read. And it explains why characters act the way they do. It explains why the world is the way it is. There's even the whole law that is throughout the entire galaxy that you cannot bring in any kind of technology that might advance the world faster than it should, right? So even when fate gets lost on this world, originally, you're like, why wouldn't the motherfucker just use a laser gun? Well, because of this law that is in the world that if you ever get caught, showing a technology that should not be in the world, you're fucked. It's like a huge offense to the entire galaxy. And Fate is also, I think there's even conversations in the game that is not in the dictionary. He even comments that his like, cause he does, I think he does sports. He does like basketball and he's like a karate, whatever kind of fucking martial arts he does. And he even comments that he has such more training than these people from such a low civilization that it's like for free. So he wouldn't need to use a laser gun anyway, besides this law. And there's only if he was versus a lot of guys, what he even tells himself, I wouldn't be able to pull my punches if I was versing this many people, even with all my training. So whatever the case, there's this sort of plausible, reasoning why he acts the way he does, why other characters do, right? Why you don't use certain technological advancements, right? Again, a lot of that stuff gets thrown out the window the last two-thirds of the game, although they still try to explain it why you don't use laser guns, everybody. But whatever the case, it makes it easier for you to suspend disbelief. Now, in a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, remake, whatever, Sephiroth is so ambiguously powerful, you don't know what the standard of rule is for what is, plausible I can't speak English. Suspend disbelief, and what is the other English phrase I'm looking for? Again, my English is terrible, but Final Fantasy VII, it's like I don't understand what is actually the rules of what is, plausible because just random shit happens all the time. And I understand it's fiction. Sometimes you have some fun stuff, but there's no pacing to the game. Again, Sephiroth's powers are so ambiguously world time altering. They make no sense. And yet your characters just beat him like nothing. Through these huge magical time altering battles, they continuously beat him. Of course, when you beat him, though, they just fly away. Goodbye. Waves like a little fucking Team Rocket character or some shit like that. However, let's not forget also in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Remake, whatever it is, the I had to look it up because I'm like, this is not how it happened in the first game, and it isn't, right? So, but I had to look it up, and I forgot his name. The guy who runs the prison cell under Golden Sauce or whatever. His single henchman with like a fucking wrench beat up your entire team and put them in a jail cell. And Cloud's like, well, I can't save you guys. There's no way I could just beat a henchman with a wrench and a bat. Although I can defeat these time-altering, world-crazy beings. How am I supposed to suspend belief? I can't even say it because it's getting so ridiculous. And that's what I'm getting at, basically. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has a lot of things that are hard to swallow. Whereas if you play other RPGs, some RPGs do a better job of immersing yourself in the world, and you can suspend disbelief, right? And this doesn't only have to be a problem for RPGs. Like, again, I've used the example of Street Fighter. Why is Ryu the main character of Street Fighter anymore? Because his character doesn't make sense. You used to be able to suspend disbelief that this character has dedicated his life to nothing but fighting. He's the whisper of a hero. All he does is train. And he actually, the reason he has so many, whispers of him is because he's a legitimate badass and he beat Sagat. He like humbled the master with a dragon punch that nobody had ever seen before. All these techniques, right? It's no wonder that once you got to Street Fighter 2, all this kind of stuff, and Bison wanted to challenge him. He wanted him. But they changed it to Ryu goes evil. He never beat Sagat legitimately. Sagat was kicking his ass, and then Sagat went to give him his hand to pick him up, and Ryu got angry, so he cheap-shotted him with a dragon punch. Now, this also makes no sense for Sagat's story, because why would Sagat go evil and then want to work for M. Bison? It's not like he was arrogant before and he thought he was the best, and, he was humbled by this, newcomer who showed all these techniques that no one's ever showed before. He's apparently a gracious hero who he went to go help Ryu up, and he gave him his hand, and then Ryu cheap-shotted him, and somehow that mind fucked him so bad he decided to become evil. He decided to teach himself the dragon punch, even though he only got hit by it because he got cheap-shotted. And Bison also wants Ryu, even though Ryu never legitimately beats anybody. He just turns evil and throws Hadokens. Ken actually wins legitimate tournaments, and he doesn't even train, and he does other shit. Why don't you want Ken? Like I said, the Street Fighter story, it's hard to suspend disbelief because Street Fighter story makes no fucking sense anymore. The entire mythos of it makes no sense. Right? It's retarded. How can you? It's like another thing. We get into something like Canon. What is Canon and all this kind of stuff? I'll use another example. Let's look at something like, say, when you change the canon and when you change the story and the lore so often for characters, it's hard to even know what is real. Like you could meet somebody. They're like, oh, I like Ryu, and he starts telling you about how Ryu is evil and he never has actually beat anybody, but it's cool that he's evil and emo. And you're like, well, fuck, that's not even the same character that I like, right? When we get into something like, say, the Guilty Gear stuff, and people have wanted to cancel me for it, like the crazy stuff that people have made up, I've said the Bridget retcon and all this kind of stuff is retarded because it makes no sense. What is the lure of the character? How do you suspend disbelief? Oh, Bridget had this entirely different backstory. Oh, and now at the end of the original Guilty Gear, she was going to find her brother who was disappearing or whatever like that. Now they changed Bridget to Bridget is apparently a transgender icon. And it's like, can you imagine someone that like, and the craziest thing is there's even old interviews with Daisuke where he's laughing about how I thought it'd be funny if people eventually find out, it's a guy, whatever. It's like, hey, I got you. And we all laughed about it while we were designing the character. I didn't tell them at first, but then I'm like, oh yeah, in the story I'm gonna say it's a guy. Got you, bro, Boku no Pico, whatever. And then it's like, no, Bridget is now a transgender icon, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's not even the story. What about, so she doesn't care about the brother? We're writing that out of the story. Don't worry about it. She doesn't care about the missing brother. Oh, what about, how she had there you go, I even said she, because it's a she now, whatever. He, she, he, she, they, them, whatever. Guilty gear pronoun, you know. And it's like, imagine meeting someone like, oh yeah, I always like Bridget. And then you meet this person who is some overly radical LGBTQ member. Oh yeah, Bridget is my favorite transgender icon. I love how they're a girl. And the person's like, no, they're a boy. No, Daisuke changed the story. And like, oh, well, it's not even the same character anymore. You know? And again, I use the Ryu example. I'm not like, I don't hate Ryu. I don't hate evil characters. I'm just saying it's retarded when you change it. Oh, Testament. Oh, yeah, Testament is now non-binary and gender fluid. What? That wasn't his story before. Oh, well, Daisuke said, there was an old interview where Daisuke said that, Testament has an androgynous look to him. Androgynous doesn't mean you're non-binary and gender fluid. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, what these characters we like, we're not even talking about the same thing. How do you suspend this? It's hard to even get into the fandom when there's no actual rule for what this character is like. It just changes. Oh, this is what this does now. This is what this does now. This is what this does now. Look at an example like Dragon Ball. I like Vegito, right? I think he's really cool. I like how they both have the same voices while they're talking. I just think he's more aesthetically pleasing than Gogeta. I like the final Kamehameha with the lightning around the Kamehameha. I think it looks cool, and I like the laser sword. And I like that he always cross your arms and kicks, because I like kicks more than punches. He just appeals to me on a nerd level more than Gogeta, right? But originally the lure of that was the earrings, it was forever. Now they changed it in Dragon Ball Super, right? They changed it in Dragon Ball Super that, it's not permanent because you're not a god. So you're just changing the story. Like, you're already changing the lure of it, which makes it not as fun, which is even stranger because even before that, they gave themselves an out by saying that the Kyoshins or whatever, Kyoshins, what the fuck they call it? I forget what they're called. Kyos? I don't remember. Whatever. They used the Dragon Balls to unfuse. So we've already given them a rule that Vegito could have beaten, Zamasu. You could have had this weird thing that he beats him with the final Kamehameha, blah, whatever. But then we have a couple of like sort of silly filler episodes where he's like with Bulma and Chi-Chi at the same time. And they're trying to decide and like, they're like, don't worry, we're finding the Dragon Balls. We're going to unfuse. Don't worry. But, they change it to, oh yeah, it's not permanent anymore. And we use the final Kamehameha, but it was so powerful that it made the fusion last even less. Now, this is even more retarded because if you think about this then, if you think about power scaling in fucking Dragon Ball, guess what? You get to then the Tournament of Power, however many episodes later, where the characters are already astronomically more powerful. Somehow Master Roshi is competing in it. Like, okay, what the fuck is going on? You know what I mean? The power scaling makes no sense. And now we have a character like Kefla, who fuses. Well, if we're going by what we just recently established was the new rules of the Potara earrings just so many episodes ago, if Vegito can boom explode the Potara earrings with just his power level so many episodes ago, and now Kefla is so much more stronger than Vegito was back then, her earrings should have just fucking exploded in the first place when she put it on. But it's not real. And you're like, Clayton, it's an anime. It's fiction. Who cares? You know what I mean? It's just for fun. It's just a cheap pop. And that's why I say it's hard to have any sort of sense of, plausible sense of or I forgot the even phrase. I forgot what I'm fucking talking about because it's so retarded, suspend disbelief. It's hard to suspend any disbelief for these characters because you can see there's no actual canon anymore. Everything is a fucking cheap pop. Oh, I'm just going to change it here. Whatever. I'm going to change this here because they're going to like this here. Oh, Zack is in Final Fantasy VII now. Guess what? He doesn't really do anything. It's just a cheap pop to see him again. And I didn't even say this. Zack is if you've ever lived in Japan or if you've ever watched like Japanese media, Zack reeked of this sort of stereotypical Japanese character that if you've ever seen them in movies, I should actually look it up to see if there's a name for it. Like, it doesn't even have to be like anime. There's a certain kind of character and the way they act, like, Skatanai, Skatanai, Shaganai, Shanina. Oh, well. Shucks. oh, shucks. So I just like, oh my God, it's infuriating how retarded it is. I don't know. Hopefully you get what I'm getting at. It's hard to like feel invested in anything when canon doesn't matter. Everything is a cheap pop. Final Fantasy VII's like, how do I suspend it? It's just like nothing is real. And I know it's not real. I know Pikachu doesn't really have a lightsaber with a machine gun with a Dino Rider's shark, but sometimes it's nice if you can at least suspend disbelief in the story. But too often in fiction, you can't do that anymore. It's ridiculous. If you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. The end.